of those old jingles.
Wonderful BBC Golden Radio.
Well, let me introduce you to a bloke who was instrumental in my career, Rosco Meldrum.
Hey,
How are you, Ross?
Very good, thanks, mate.
All right, it is great to catch up with you. Ross, you were here from 1970 to 1986, 16 years.
That's right, yeah. It's a bit unbelievable, actually, when I think back on it. But
Yeah.
so many wonderful talents
Yes.
that went through the radio stations in those days.
It was so different those days, wasn't it?
It is compared to...
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still involved in radio, and I see, the technology you're working with. And
Yeah.
as you were just saying a minute ago...
I have the occasional stuff up. You would tell us Mike Ahern used to have the occasional stuff up because he had those bad eyes.
That's right. I always remember, and to this day, I'm still trying to remember the name of the guy. What Mike did, because he did have bad eyesight, was if he made a mistake panelling, because we all panelled ourselves in those days.
Yes. And I choose to panel these days, where
That's
most
right.
blokes have got an operator.
But if he made a mistake, he'd immediately blame this character. Say, what are you doing?
I should have thought about this one before I started panelling.
That's right.
Maybe it's not too late to introduce that character.
Well, you could.
I'll
Give it a try.
I'll come up with a pseudonym and throw you. What are you doing there? What are you doing?
That's right.
Sounds like
simple.
Now, Rosco, you were an announcer on the station. You're the afternoon announcer. I used to listen to you when I was at school. Then you became the music director. Then you became the program director.
Yeah.
And at one stage when you were the music director, you were the bloke who said to me, you created my persona.
I did. And you know what, Pete? I can still see us in the exact spot we did that.
Really?
Yes. Can you?
It was in the record library, I reckon.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was... You remember the old cart room where all the commercials were?
Yes.
And we were standing in the doorway. You were getting your carts out for your shift.
Yeah.
And we were standing in the doorway together and just chatting, and I looked at you and said, I think you should call yourself Silly Dick.
I can't stand it. And it happened.
And, mate, look at the career that launched.
Well, the thing about it is, everybody had crazy names like that.
That's right.
There was Mad Mal in Sydney.
Sydney, correct.
There was Bird Brain Bert Robinson in Brisbane.
That's right.
There were all sorts. Everybody had just sort of names like that.
That's right.
But
and I often just wonder what it was that made me think that would apply to you.
Well, there you go. So it created a bit of a monster, didn't it? Actually,
it did actually, but it worked.
Well, it worked. It worked very well, and it was a bit because we did the nighttime thing, which was. In those days, the kids used to listen to it.
That's right. Yeah.
It was very heavily listened to by, 10 to 16, 17-year-olds.
That's right.
And so we created these characters like Silly Chick was the girlfriend.
Oh, dear.
And then Wagga McCartney came along and took it to another level altogether.
He did. That's right.
With all the stupid stuff that he used to do. But it was part and parcel of nighttime radio because it is very different to what talkback radio is these days, of course.
Yeah, that's right.
But we were all things to all people, weren't we, Ross?
Well, that's very true. Yeah, as a radio station, we did have, as you say, listeners from that young demographic right through to adults, and that's... It's just not the same today, But that's the way radio's gone, and fair enough,
Yeah, because we'd have, you just had such diverse programs.
That's right.
You'd have a talkback program, then you'd have the afternoon program. I'd be playing, I've said this time and time again, you'd be playing Golden Earring with Radar Love, followed by Judd Strunk's A Daisy a Day.
Exactly.
I think you'd actually mix it like that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, you know something, Brisbane, you talk about Judd Strunk Daisy a Day, was a country song.
Yeah.
But Brisbane, there was an enormous number of country songs that made the charts. Because I did an exercise a few years ago where somebody wanted a whole stack of country music, but that was hits on radio in Australia. And I went through all the years, and the number of songs I pulled out that were big hits over the years, all country songs.
Yeah.
And you're right, the mixture...
Was everything.
Mate, remember, we were playing Led Zeppelin and Donny Osmond.
There you go, back to back.
At the same time.
Yeah, so you had that, and then you'd have a racing program. So it was such diverse radio. Who were some of the great talents you worked with here?
Well, mate, when I first got here, Johnny James
of course.
Was still here, and I see Johnny regularly.
Yeah.
And Mike Ahern, of course.
Yeah, great breakfast announcement.
It was such a thrill for me because I was only 19 when I joined. And 2 years before, I was at high school listening to these
Well,
guys on the radio.
Yeah.
Graham Smith was here. Ronnie Sparks.
Oh, yes, that's
Remember
right.
Ronnie?
Yeah. Ron
Graham-
E. Sparks.
Ron E.
And
Sparks.
the Sparks was S-P-A-K-S.
That's right,
Yeah. All these names created to make it sound like pop stars.
Grant Goldman was here at the time. Bert Robertson, of course, who was just the most amazing character.
Wasn't he?
One of the things I can still see in my mind today, remember Sergeant Schultz,
Yes.
right? He visited us one day.
Oh, yeah.
He of course, Bert Robertson used to do the lunchtime show. That was when he
Just
was
like
on.
this. Yeah.
And he interviewed Sergeant Schultz. Well, the first 15 minutes was like an episode from that show, because Bert put on a German accent and just went away like you wouldn't believe, and Sergeant Schultz followed him. And it was just amazing radio. He was just a wonderful character.
He was an incredible entertainer, Bert Robinson, wasn't he?
He was.
And, of course, you also came to my first wedding, and just before we went on the air, you said, that was one of the funniest days. Why it was I mean, I've had two, Rosco. Two. I've just told you the second one fell over.
Oh, dear, mate.
Oh, dear, mate, exactly.
You know, I've got to say this, from the moment you joined the radio station, and like every day was a real, different day with you. You never quite knew what the day was going to behold as you walked through the door.
Oh, dear.
But that I always felt was such great. You're a fantastic character, and that was part of it. And that first wedding, I always remember it because it was a Greek wedding.
It was.
And of course, you were the most un-Greek person there.
And the whole ceremony was in Greek.
Yeah, the ceremony was in Greek.
I had no idea what was going on. And I was absolutely, I've got to say, I was very inebriated.
Really?
We were staying at the Crest Hotel, and I shared the sauna with the Beach Boys. They were in town.
Were they?
Went down to the sauna, and they were in the sauna. And I'd been drinking scotch from about midday.
Did they drink? Did they?
No, they didn't, but we had a few. But I always remember that was my brush with fame, and the sauna at the Crest Hotel, the Beach Boys.
Oh, dear. I was really lovely to hear Hayden Sargent with Greg Carey just before noon, because what a lot of people wouldn't know was that apart from doing my own shift, I panelled for Hayden for many, many years.
You did too.
And I always remember, because he and I ended up doing a very special series of programs from London. It was the Queen's Silver Jubilee.
Yeah.
And the Australian government, as part of those celebrations, sent an announcer from each capital city.
Yeah, I think Hayden's touched on it with Greg, interviewing Prince Charles.
That's right.
Yeah.
And because I was panelling Hayden in those days, you were allowed to take one producer. And I was lucky enough to get chosen. And of course, I went to London with Hayden, and we did those week-long, broadcasts every day. But I always remember the thing that I was most worried about was Hayden had been ill, seriously ill, not long before that.
Lung cancer, yes.
And he was on blood thinners because the thing that really knocked him around was blood clots. And he was on blood thinners. And I remember when I met up with him and we got to London, he said, "Ross, if I get hit by a cab or a car, don't try and do something for me. Just get the doctor there as quickly as possible," because he said, I won't last very long. And I had that in the back of my mind the whole trip. And the other thing was that because it was much cooler there then than it was back home here in Australia, and Hayden would shave every morning, of course, and for the first hour he'd have tissues in his collar because he was on these blood thinners.
Oh, I see,
And just the tiniest nick would bleed for ages. And we'd be in London cabs going to, interview some celebrity, and Hayden would have these tissues stuck in
Norman
his
Gunston style.
That's right. I just never forgot that. And when I heard him this morning with Greg, it brought it all back.
Yeah,
it was a fantastic time.
Well, there's certainly one of the legends of Brisbane radio, no question about that. And Brian of the Sunshine Coast, he's got a memory. You might might have a memory. 13 13 32 is our number. And Brian, good morning, good afternoon, I should say. Brian?
Good morning.
Yes.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, hello, boys.
How
Hello.
are you?
Very good. Yeah, hearing you gentlemen takes me back to when I was an apprentice in Brisbane. We used to listen to 4BC because the scratchings came on.
Yes.
Then we had Hayden, and then Vince came on and got the real things happening. But there was a lunatic you had working there at one stage. I forget who he was, but on April the 1st, he told all of Wavell Heights that the water was going to be cut off.
Was that Bert?
That was Bert.
That was Bert,
Fill
yeah.
up saucepans in your bathtubs, and of course they give it due diligence and did it. And then at 12 o'clock before he went off, he said, April Fool.
Yeah, and I think he got into trouble about that one too, didn't he, Ross?
He got
He
no
got
horror
into
stuff.
serious trouble.
And anyway, Pete, today's my birthday, same day as yours.
Oh, we'll give you a cheesecake, eh? Is that what we've got, cheesecakes? We've got cheesecakes to give away.
Oh, that's all I need, yeah.
Yeah, okay, fatten you up
But
a little bit.
I'm had a day in the shower, and I'm putting lotions and ointments across my body because I'm going to grab a granny night tonight. And I reckon with a bit of luck,
Leave me alone,
I
Brian.
might get an old girl with a bit of money.
All right, Brian, good luck. She's got a sister. Anyway, Rossi, were you part of hiring Wayne Roberts to 4BC as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
I've got to say, and I'm still good friends with Wayne. I see him, on a reasonly regular basis.
He's the most irreverent man I've ever met in my life. I was trying to explain. Don't you think?
Oh, well, he's Wayne Roberts.
Yeah,
And I've always said to people that he is one of the greatest talents
Oh, yes.
I ever had the pleasure to work with. And to still be friends with him and see him on occasions, is great. We have terrific memories together.
People often say to me, what's he doing? And I say, counting his money.
But you're right, Pete. I still remember to this very day he was living up on the north coast
Yeah.
at Coolum, and I still remember us going up there and having a talk to him and trying to convince him to get back into radio. And he'd had a short period of retirement from radio, and anyway, we were successful and brought him back and put him on the breakfast show here at 4BC, and he just did wonderful things.
Yeah, he was very successful, wasn't he?
He was very successful, yeah. I always said about Wayne, he was the Cecil B. DeMille of radio.
Yeah.
You could give him a little idea,
Oh, he was magnificent. Yeah.
and he would turn it into something that you just wouldn't even think about.
It's so true, but you know what? I'd never realised, and it's certainly not, being critical one little bit, but the one thing that amazed me about Wayne was when you watched him work, he was so tense. He was so uptight. You'd hear it on the air, and it was so, easygoing and so funny. And then when you watched him work, have you got that, Magella? Have you got that number? They used to work with the doors open.
Yes,
All
yes.
studios are sealed by these doors because of soundproof. He used to have the doors open so he could scream at people.
That's right. Yeah. That's
That's how he worked.
that's right. Well, everybody's got different ways in which
Absolutely.
Pete, I knew announcers. We're sitting in a studio, and you've got a great big window in front of you, and we're talking to people over the air. But I remember announcers who would pull the curtains.
I couldn't watch people.
They
Yes,
could
yes,
not
yes,
stand
yes.
anybody looking at them while they were on air.
That's right.
So that's the sort of differences that there are in people. Doesn't matter what you're doing.
Exactly, yeah.
You know.
I know who that bloke was. Anyway, Ross, it's been lovely catching up with you, having a few memories of the wonderful Big BC.
Yeah.
There's been some amazing characters over the years and some amazing bosses. Do you remember the Bob Stevenson, the boss we had back in the 70s?
Yes.
Wasn't he a strange character?
Yeah, he was. Bob had some very strange ways.
Yes, he did.
He did, but by the same token, he just did everything he could to make the station successful.
And it was because of
And
those ideas.
Bob Stevenson was the man who introduced, people may remember at one time we were Funtastic 4BC. That was Bob's idea.
Yeah.
And he just saw it through to the end. It was very successful. Of course, I was doing music in those days. And Bob would be on to me all the time. Every song we played had to be up.
That's right.
Had to be up and happy.
Yes, I remember.
So that the
Couldn't play ballads.
Fantastic 4BC came through in every way possible.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And it was
that's right.
successful.
That's right.
The funniest thing, I don't know, look, I have told this story before, so I can tell him. He's not with us any longer. But he did, the first thing he asked me when he met me was, are you gay?
Well, Pete,
It must have been the high heels.
can I, seeing as you've mentioned the word, can I tell you a story quickly?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. You've just said it. It was one of those strange things that Bob had a particular feeling about.
Yeah.
And under no circumstances, if anything sounded slightly gay on the radio station, then he would be onto you like a rock, right? Anyway, I get called up to his office one day, not knowing why, and go in, and Bob says to me, Ross, are we playing a song that could be,
A gay song.
A gay song? Yeah. And I've said, what? He said, I hear this song on air.
I know the song.
Is it a gay song? Because, I don't want any gay songs on the radio. And I've gone, I had to think for a minute. And then it came to me. You tell me what you think.
It was My Girl Bill.
My Girl.
And it was it wasn't gay at all, but it starts out sounding like it's two gay guys talking, but it's not like that at all if you listen to the lyrics, yeah.
And that was it, My Girl Bill.
Yeah.
And that was...
Take it off the air, it sounds gay.
Jim Stafford.
Yeah,
Jim Stafford wrote it and recorded it, but it was also released at the same time here in Australia by Cash Bachman.
That's it, that's the one.
And so I had to convince Bob
that
it wasn't a gay song. So you can imagine what that was like, knowing Bob.
Oh, dear. Anyway, great to catch up with you, Rosco.
And Pete, it's so great to see you again too, mate. And as I said to you before, I'm so glad you haven't changed a bit.
No.
And because I still believe you're one of the great personalities of radio.
Thank you, mate. We are what we are.
You are.
Good on you,
Indeed.
Rosco. Rosco Meldrum, who was a legend here on 4BC from 1970 to 86, 26 past 12.
Your invitation to Brisbane's best breakfast with Jamie and Ian.
When we were kids, we went on a holiday and drove to Harvey Bay with 6 people, 1 dog, 1 cat, 2 birds and 13 mice.
Oh, heavens.
In 1 car. I wonder if it was a Datsun 121.
Mice. I suppose you went
I
mice.
think they came with the car, mate.
Yeah, they're in the door panels, eating the wiring.
Brisbane's best breakfast. Jamie and Ian on News Talk 1116 4BC.